right, so today we are working on section 3.3 part B. So part A was the easier part of it, like I kind of mentioned yesterday, where all you do is you add. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, you subtract, and then it should work. Like one of those should work. If they don't, then you're doing something wrong. You're adding wrong, you're subtracting wrong, something's wrong. But one of those two methods should work. And then 3.3b is, well, what if those methods don't work? Okay. Now, if you're wondering, well, then why are we doing the don't work today, but you said they were all supposed to work yesterday? Well, they were because I didn't want to do the multiplication stuff yesterday. So everything I gave you guys yesterday for homework, as an example, was going to work by adding or subtracting. Today, I made sure that by adding and subtraction, they don't work. And I'll show you in the first example really quick. And you don't have to write it down what I do in the very beginning, but just look so you can see what I'm talking about. And then the only new thing we have to do is what I put up on the top. It says, are there matching coefficients? And if not, multiply first. So in today's homework, you're going to notice none of the numbers in front of the variables. So the two x values that you can see, like in this first example, they don't match up. The x on top has a 1, and then the other one has an 8. And then the y value has a 6 and a 2. I don't even care about the plus or minus signs, okay? Ignore that. Who cares? Just worry about the numbers themselves. So a 1 and an 8 for x, a 6 and a 2 for y. They don't match, okay? So if they don't match, that means when you add and subtract them, it's not going to work. So let me show you what I mean by that. So don't write this down right now, what I'm about to do. Just watch, because what I'm about to do, I'm going to do it wrong twice, okay? And then I'll do it the correct way eventually. So if I add these first, okay, because that's what I told you guys in yesterday's steps, right? Just add. If you don't want to think about it, just go ahead and add. Well, 1x plus 8x, that's 9x. And if I add negative 6y plus 2y, that's negative 4y. So notice, I failed in what I need to do. I need to eliminate something, but nothing happened, right? So that means that addition doesn't work. So then what I'm going to try is subtraction. 1 minus 8 is negative 7x, and negative 6 minus 2y is negative 8y. So again, I tried a different technique, subtraction, and I still didn't get elimination, right? Again, this is called elimination. The point is something has to go away, all right? So since none of that worked, then I'm stuck, okay? So what do? We multiply. So I look at the top equation, I look at the bottom equation, and I see like the x's have a 1 and an 8, the y's have a 6 and a 2. Can I multiply either the top equation or the bottom equation only to make one of those match, like the x's or the y's? The x, what do I multiply? Which x? The top or the bottom x? Oh, so you're saying the top equation, let's multiply the top equation by 8 so that we can get 8x's on both of them, right? Okay, so we can do that. So I'm going to put a big parenthesis like this, and I'm only going to multiply the top equation by 8, okay? Because when I do that, this is what I get. 8x, right? 8 times x is 8x. 8 times negative 6, that's negative 48y. And 8 times negative 14, well, let's see, 8 times 4 is 32, 8, 9, 10, 11, so it's 112. Okay? Now that might look like I just made things a lot worse, but a lot of times when you multiply, that's kind of what happens. Okay? You kind of make things a lot worse. But it doesn't mean that it's bad. We're doing the right thing here. I'm going to rewrite the bottom equation. Oops, sorry, not 112, it's just 12. Now, do I have matching values for x or y? Yeah, my x's now match. So what should I do to eliminate 8x and 8x? Should I add or subtract? I should subtract, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and start subtracting. And there will be an elimination here. 8x minus 8x is 0. Negative 48y minus 2y is negative 50y. Negative 112 minus a negative, that's plus, right? Minus a negative 12. So that's negative 112 plus 12, that's negative 100. So if I divide both sides by a negative 50, I get that y is equal to 2. So remember the step 3 that I told you guys yesterday? I said once you find your answer, you're going to plug it back into one of the original equations. Okay? So which equation do you want? The ones in black, okay? The top or the bottom one? Which one do you want me to plug it into? The top one? All right. I heard top real quick. So let's put it into the top one here. X minus 6y. So x minus 6 and y is going to be a 2. So I'm just going to change the color here. Equals to negative 14. So x minus 12 is negative 14. We'll move this negative 12 over. So that's x equals negative 2. So I just found my two solutions. Okay, my x and my y values. So let me put them as a point. Negative 2, 2. Remember, x goes first, y goes second. And there you go. This is elimination by multiplication. Okay? You know you're going to have to multiply because when you add and when you subtract, nothing eliminates. And when nothing eliminates, I'm going to have to do something to fix it. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply. Now you can multiply just one equation, the top one, or just the bottom one. Whatever you want. If I wanted to make, let's say, from these two equations, if I wanted to make the y's match, what could I have done? I have a 6 on top, a 2 on the bottom. Sorry? If I would have divided the top by 2, you're saying? Well, then that'd give me a half x, which I don't like. I don't like a fraction. I'd have a 3y, which is okay, and a 7 at the end, which is fine. But that fraction scares me, right? Yeah, if I multiply the bottom equation by 3, 8 times 3 would be 24, but then the y value would be a 6y, and then the 6's would match. Okay? So you have to think about which letter do I want to eliminate so I can make them match, right? What can I do to make the numbers match? So that's what makes this process a little bit tougher because you kind of have to think your way through it. Now there is a lazy way to do it, and I'll show you. I think I can show you in the next one, or maybe after that, we'll see. No, I think it might be the last example. It might be the last example here. Example 3, I think I can do that with. So same thing, solve by elimination. Okay? And notice, if I just add negative x plus negative 3x, that's a negative 4x. And 5 plus a negative 7 is a negative 2y. So nothing will eliminate. If I subtract negative x minus negative 3x, that's 2x. And 5y minus a negative 7y, that's 12y. So nothing eliminates. I tried adding. I did it in my head. Okay? I tried adding. I tried subtracting. It's not going to work. Okay? Either way, I'm going to get two variables popping up again when I add or when I subtract. So that's not useful. So that means I'm kind of stuck. So I have to multiply. Okay? Which variable looks like it might be easiest to multiply? Like what letter would I like to try to match up? The y's or the x's? The x's. And what am I going to do to make the x's match?
Multiply by negative 3.
Multiply by negative 3? On the top or on the bottom?
On the top.
On the top. Now if I multiply by negative 3, that's nothing wrong with that. Okay? I would just pick a 3 because then they'd match. But it doesn't matter even if you pick negative 3. Let's do it. Just so you can see. See, I would have picked the 3 because then they would have matched. No big deal. But what if I would have done a negative 3 instead? So let me multiply by negative 3. You're going to notice nothing bad happens. Okay? So don't feel like, man, should it be positive? Should it be negative? Who cares? The only thing that's going to happen is I would have subtracted originally and you're going to add. But it doesn't matter. We're still going to get the same answer. So check it out. When I multiply negative 3 times negative x, that's 3x. Negative 3 times 5 is a negative 15y. And negative 3 times a negative 15, that's a positive 45. I'm going to rewrite the bottom, so it's negative 3x minus 7y equals negative 1. All right. to get rid of the x's, because 3 and a negative 3, do I add or subtract? I'm going to add, right? If I would have just multiplied by a 3, I would be subtracting here. But it doesn't matter. You're still going to get the same answers in the end. So 3x plus a negative 3x, 0. Negative 15y plus a negative 7y, negative 22y. 45 plus negative 1, 44. If I divide both sides by a negative 22, I get that y is equal to negative 2. Again, it doesn't matter if you multiply by a 3 or by a negative 3. It doesn't matter. You're just going to either add while I subtract, or I'm going to subtract while you add. It doesn't matter, okay? We'll still get the same answer. So now that I know that y is equal to negative 2, I'm going to plug it into the original equations, either the top one or the bottom one. Which one do you guys want? Top one? All right. So let's put negative x plus 5 times y is a negative 2. So let me change the color here. Equal to negative 15. So I get negative x minus 10 is equal to negative 15. I'm going to add 10 to this side, and I get negative x is equal to negative 5. And if I divide both sides by negative 1, my answer is just 5. So my point is 5, negative 2. Notice the work we're doing is identical to yesterday's. There's just one step that's extra, right? The multiplication, so that I make a match so that I can do the work like I did the stuff yesterday, okay? So the only thing that's new is this part right here, guys. This is all that's new, just that. The multiplication, because after that, the way the green equations are, that's the way the homework was yesterday. Okay, just either add or subtract. You figure it out, okay? The only thing new is the multiplication. So we're going to do one more of these things, and then I'll give you guys your homework. Now, I'm going to do something that I normally wouldn't do, but I'm going to do it on purpose so that you guys can see what some people call the lazy way of doing these problems. Okay? It's not that it's wrong. It's just you're going to choose one variable to get rid of, and then you're going to do it in a quick way. But some people would say, but that's lazy to do it that way. Just think a little harder and you can find a faster way, right? And it's not that it's that much faster, but it does add a little bit to it, okay? So I'm going to show you guys the lazy way of how to do something like this. So sometimes some people don't want to think about the fact that if I just multiplied the bottom one by 6, I can get matching y values, right? Because 6 times 6 is 36, I'd have matching y values, okay? But sometimes people don't want to think about that, like, or maybe they just don't see it, right? Multiplication-wise, they can't think like, oh, I should have done by 6, right? So sometimes what I tell people is if you're not sure, then pick the variable with the smallest numbers. So I would say x, right? 9 and 2, okay? Versus 36 and 6. So 9 and 2. So this is what you do. If you don't want to deal with thinking too much and you're like, I'm just going to go, I just want to do the work. I'm going to multiply both equations. I want the x's to cancel out. So I want those to match. And why did I pick the x? Because they're the smallest coefficients, the smallest numbers. Okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the bottom equation by 9 and the top one by 2. You notice how I kind of flipped the x values, right? The top equation has a 9x, the bottom one has a 2x. So I just kind of like flipped them. I put the bottom one with the 9, the top one with the 2. Okay? Look what happens. I get negative 18x plus 72y is equal to negative 54. So I'm multiplying by 2, everything by 2. Okay? And then the bottom will be negative 18x. So notice how the x is now matched up. Okay? So I made them match up. Again, I did this the lazy way without really thinking too much. I'm just going to multiply this one by the other coefficient and the bottom one by the other coefficient, right? I'm just going to like diagonally do it. 9 times 6, that's going to be 54y equals to, that's going to be a negative 72. Sometimes the numbers can get big, so, calculators might be helpful. I'll bring them out today. So let me just make sure I did multiply everything out correctly before I start. But 36 times 2 is 72. 27 times 2 is 54. 9 times 2 is 18. 6 is 54. And 72. All right. So if I want to get rid of the 18s that match, should I add or subtract? I got to subtract them, right? So let me put minus. Because if the numbers match perfectly, you subtract. If they're off by a sign, you'll add. So negative 18 minus a negative 18, that cancels. 72 minus a 54, that's 18. Yeah, 18y. Okay. And then negative 54 minus a negative 72, that means plus. So that's going to be 18. Okay, so divide both sides by 18, and I get that y is equal to 1. All right, now I pick an equation. Now, if I were you, I'd probably pick the bottom one. Out of the two black equations, I would pick the bottom one. That just looks easier. So I'm going to pick the bottom one here. So negative 2x plus 6y. So negative 2x plus 6 times 1 equals to negative 8. So negative 2x plus 6 is negative 8. I'll move that 6 over. So it's negative 2x equals negative 14. And if I divide both sides by negative 2, I get that x has to be 7. So my answer, 7 comma 1. All right, and this is what your homework's going to look like. Now, if you're wondering, well, could I have done this faster? Yeah, I could have saved a multiplication if I just multiplied the bottom by 6. And that would have made my y's match. But if you don't want to worry about thinking too much, in a sense, right, then just pick a variable that you find is easy. So the x's were the easiest ones for me because 9 and 2. I'd rather not multiply by 36. Okay? So I'd rather pick a 9 and a 2. That's easier to do versus a 36 and a 6. So I picked the 9 and the 2. I just kind of cross their numbers up, right? The 9 on top went to the bottom. The 2 on the bottom went up to the top. And then I multiplied everything out. So that's what makes it a little bit longer because you, instead of just doing one multiplication, you're doing 2. Okay? But once you get that set up, the work is just like yesterday's homework. You'll have something that'll eliminate, and you should be able to find your solutions pretty easily. So let me give you guys a homework, and you can get started on it.